Okay, I am trying to get back in, so let's see what happens now. Hopefully that will have done it because I came out and I came back in. So hopefully we have a whole new live going on. But I don't know, guys. Okay, so I am hoping that I'm in. I can see. Okay, there we go. I am hoping that I'm in. I can. Okay, so hey, Miss Me. Hey, Miss Simmons. How are you today? Hopefully, we're going to get started. I think I lost some people that are going to try to go into Facebook. So I'm hoping that everything kind of pans itself out and works itself back in. But I'll tell you this, it's not working for me like it worked last week. So I am only looking at your comments on my phone. And I am sorry, guys, because I am not as computer literate as I should be. But I'll get to that soon enough. So let me just check on Facebook and see if I can get the Facebook to come up. And then we should be all set to get started. As we know, last week's topic was on parenting effectively. This week, we're going to talk about parenting older children, adult children, and we're going to talk about it from that side of things as opposed to young children. So it's as though we did what we needed to do, raising our babies, and now we are trying to go about raising or having a relationship with our um, adult children now. So that's where we're at. I can't get into the Facebook thing. I don't know what's going on. Just give me a minute, guys. Please, please. So, um, okay, so let's see what happens here. Okay, so here we go. Okay, so hey, Dolly. Hey, Diane. Um, Okay, I got this. It's not the way I expected to work, but I'm here. It's working. I'm glad that you guys are here. So as I was saying last week, we were caught up in that conversation, and it was a good conversation. We were getting into it, and time kind of ran away from us. So there were some questions asked at the end of that it seemed as though we lost a little context. We weren't all in the same. We were thinking differently, or we weren't seeing eye to eye on some things. Hey, Tawana. So this week, I'm going to start out with that conversation. But before we even get into that, I want to show a little reclip of kind of what was going on last week, just to familiarize yourselves with last week's conversation. So I'm going to play that right now so we can watch this together.
In a mooted place, right? Think logically about it. The science doesn't lie. Just my opinion.
Well, you know what? I really appreciate your opinion. I don't. There's nothing that you said that I disagree with. That people have to realize that there is a better way. Um, you have to realize that, and you have to want to change things. You have to, but you also have to know that there is a better way. How do you know there's a better way? You try something different, and that's what the problem is. So I came into this saying that I was beat as a child. I was beat. I'm like Missy. I didn't get beat a lot because I didn't want to be hit. I was going to do the right thing, but I got beat. and I watched my siblings get beat. I watched my friends get beat. So I understood that. But then, and I remember growing up saying, I'm never going to beat my kids because who wants their children to feel like they feel? I mean, you want to prove that your parents did it the wrong way because you could do it the right way. So for me, like I said, when I had my first child, I did spank. And then there was a point where, no, this doesn't work. So I tried something different. And when I had my second set of children, I did something totally different. They've never gotten a beating in their lives. I want to beat them now, but they didn't get beat then. But so I tried something different, and so therefore I knew something different worked. And then this is something that I don't agree with. I don't agree with parents being out in public and not disciplining their children. I believe that at that very moment when that child is doing wrong, that is the time that you stop whatever you're doing. Too many parents want to continue shopping. No, I have shut it down. I have left the part, left everything, and we are leaving. If you are, I've seen parents standing in line and the kids are screaming and shouting. No, take that child out and take care of that child, whichever way you want to take care of the child. But if you allow the child to misbehave and continue to misbehave when they're outside, they're going to continue doing it. I don't understand why parents don't just stop. Stop.
And I agree. I agree, Carol. I think, again, giving you just my perspective on my kids, if you're going to act up, I want you to act up inside my house. Because the level of crazy for me will change if you act up outside the house.
Okay, guys, so that was just played to try to give you a reminder of what last week's conversation was about. Hey, Vern's Junk Closet, thank you so much for coming by again. Thank you. I appreciate it. I appreciate all of you for coming in. Hey, Thomas, how are you today? I want to thank you. I can see everybody on Facebook. Hey, Dorothy, glad you made it in. Um, Diane, I just want to make sure that I hit everyone because I'm so appreciative. Miss Simmons, Tawana, Miss Me. Thank you guys for showing up. So we left off with a question from Thomas, and his question was, what was the solution or what were the alternatives when it came to setting boundaries as opposed to using corporal punishment? And so we left off there. And I think that we kind of hit upon it. So I'm just going to go over what I remember that we hit upon. And that was setting boundaries and showing children that there are consequences for their actions by having them lose some of their privileges, rewarding some of the good behavior. And I don't know if we hit upon this, but sometimes it works to ignore when the child is just acting out, as long as it's not something extreme, but sometimes just ignoring them because sometimes they're just seeking attention, whether it's negative or positive. So I hope that has kind of answered your questions. Hey, Sharon, good to see you. So I hope that has answered some of the questions that you had on that. And I don't know if anyone else has something that they would like to add on to that in terms of how do we not what solutions there are to corporal punishment. Because like I said, I started out spanking my children and then I decided later on that really didn't work for me. So I used other methods, such as some of the things that I just mentioned to you guys. So today's topic is basically it's the same exact topic, and that topic is how to effectively parent adult children, and this is part 2 of that. So I want to start off talking about number one of the issues that I know that comes up when it comes to adult children is that a lot of adult children have problems with the way that they were raised. And sometimes when they exhibit that they had problems or they didn't like something you did or they are angry because of the way they were raised. These are things that we sometimes have to deal with. So then the question becomes, how do we deal with that? How do we deal with adult children that may be angry or upset or didn't like the way they were raised? How do we deal with that so that we can have a healthy relationship with our adult children? If anyone has any suggestions in terms of maybe their own experiences, then please feel free to talk about it. Let's talk about it in the chat. Let's get some opinions raised here. I'm going to tell you what I feel about that. I feel one of the biggest things is that there's no perfect parent. None of us are perfect. And we talked about this, we hit upon this in the last live stream, was that parenting does not come with a book. So we are kind of learning from things that we learned from our parents, things that we've learned from our experiences in the world, and based on some of our own morals and beliefs as we're trying to raise our children. So it goes without saying that we're not going to parent perfectly. Nobody is, because we're not perfect human beings. So we're always going to have some things that we could have done better, we should have done better, some things that we stand our ground on and we say, listen, well, this is what it was. This was what I knew at the time. And so that is how I parented you. So I think it's important because a lot of parents are parenting their adult children out of guilt. So Dorothy says, as long as you can sleep at night knowing that you did your best, then you're good. And I absolutely agree with that. I just think that some lessons the children will get, or they're adults at this point, they'll get it as they go into the world and their children get older, because it's easy when you're dealing with little ones that kind of don't really give you any challenges, or you're just starting out. But as your children grow, you will see that you're not going to do everything different or perfect. You may have set out to do things a certain way, but life tends to change things for us. And I think I hit upon that last week, that I remember saying, I'm never going to beat my children when they get older. And what did I wind up doing with my firstborn? Spanking. So, we live and we learn. So Miss Me says, I would love for parents to respect their children as adults. A child's place no longer applies to an adult child. And I agree with that. I absolutely agree with that. I think that there has to be a mutual respect, not just because you are now an adult that you have a right to speak to your parent any old way or do whatever in front of your parents or whatever because you're an adult. I don't know, because everybody is different. There was still some things as an adult, 40 years old, that I would have never done or said in front of my mom just because she was my mom. So I guess it depends on how we're looking at certain things. So Thomas says, I did those things in my child's earlier years, taking away privileges. Now that she's grown and there's no privileges to revoke, she feels that her age entitles her to free speech. And guess what? Her age absolutely entitles her to free speech. Because she is an adult, she can speak whatever it is that's on her mind. It is up to us as the adults to decide what we're going to accept and what we are not going to accept. Because there definitely has to be a mutual sense of respect. And also, there's this thing that because your children don't agree with the way they were raised, that they can then speak to you, as you're saying, speak to you in your way. And that's not acceptable. And it's important that we don't enable them by giving in to whatever attitudes or whatever they portray, that we set up some boundaries and that we don't allow children to speak to us in any way, because then it becomes abusive, and vice versa. As the parent, you should have boundaries as well. Hey Shirley, good to see you. So Dorothy says the society has corrupted our children and made them weak. Think back to when we were growing up. It's absolutely different. It's absolutely different. And so I don't know. When you say, Dorothy, mutual respect is necessary, it is absolutely necessary. And I think that when your child comes to you and they say, I had a problem with this or I had a problem with that, that's okay to me. That is okay. But once a parent says, well, I apologize, that was not my intention, and I'm sorry you felt that way, then that should give the child what they need to start pushing forward or moving forward. And I say that because as an adult, I had to deal with things with my mom. And once she said to me, well, you know what, I was tough on you because this I had a lot of hope and dreams, and I knew that you were going to be okay, and I felt you could handle it. Then I had to say, you know what? I get it. I get it. And I had to go on and parent my own children because if you hold on to the anger and the resentment, there's no way you're going to be a good parent yourself. So, Dorothy says she can speak with free speech as long as it's with respect towards me. I absolutely agree because I've talked to other parents, and if you don't get that, you've got to set boundaries, whether they are your child or not. So Vern's Junk Closet says, I demand more respect from my adult children and to stop asking me for money every time they are in a crisis. And you know what? The problem is that sometimes when that's why it's so important that we forgive ourselves and don't condemn ourselves for issues that we had in raising these children, because if not, we start to parent out of guilt. And that's when we start enabling them and giving and giving and giving instead of having them go out on their own and struggle and get through it, because that is what makes you a strong willed adult. That is what makes you become successful. Those are the things that push you to become better and better in life. And it's hard. It's hard, especially for mothers, because we are naturally nurturing. So it's difficult sometimes to say no. I'm drawing the line here. This is it. And I agree. And we come from a generation, if you're in my age group, there's a generational thing where you have to have respect. I understand you have issues and you can come to me with those issues, but there has to be a mutual respect. So yeah, so stop enabling them. We absolutely have to stop enabling them because if we don't, then we are then responsible for whatever is happening to us. So we have to, at some point, because that's a part of love too. And this is where we kind of struggle with things because setting boundaries, stating what you're going to be accepting of and not accepting of, that's a part of showing love also. So loving your children does not always mean that you give them whatever they ask for, that you're there every single time that they need something. Sometimes that love means taking a step back so that they can figure out things on their own. Sometimes that's the best form of love that we can give our children. So Miss Me says at Vern's Junk Closet, and I am not your Uber. Listen, I think we've all been there where you are driving your kids from place to place, or you're giving your children your car to drive whenever they need the car. There's so many things that we do as parents, which it's okay. Like, it's okay to spoil your children. It's okay to want to give them more than what you've had, as long as they understand that you did that because you love them, that you did it because you cared about them. The problem is that when we are raising children and they become adults, all of a sudden they want to think about all the things that you did wrong as opposed to what you've done right. And that right there is a huge, huge problem. So stop enabling them. How do we stop enabling them? I mean, at what point? This is a question. So if your child comes to you and says, they've been out on their own for a little while and they lost their apartment and they have nowhere to stay. What do we do? Is that time a time? Say this is the second time that's happened. Is that a time for you to show tough love and say, nope, you've got to work this out on your own? Or do we then say, oh no, come on back home? Like, at what point do we know that it's not helping and it's enabling? Does anyone have an answer for that? Like, how do we figure that out? Hey, Clarence, good to see you. Um, Dorothy says, I demand respect, no negotiations. I still respect my mother at age 77 and will not ever disrespect her, even though I may not always agree with her. And that is the thing in a nutshell, is that we don't have to agree. We can agree to disagree, but there has to be a mutual respect. So now I want to talk about how we need to, as parents, let go of the expectations of how our children should react or respond to our parenting. So if your child comes to you and they say, I didn't like the way you did this and I don't like the way you did that, and we're upset because we feel we've done a good job, we have to find a way to let go of our expectations of how they should feel, because they have their own set of feelings, their own opinions. So at some point we have to let go of what we are feeling. We have to let it go and change and try to not have such expectations of them, because I think there's a thing with children, they're younger, they're looking up to us, they expect us to be perfect. Once they become adults, they should know at that point, wow, you know, she's not perfect, but I can see that she's done the best that she could possibly do. So, hey, how are you today? Welcome the NDT show. Welcome. Thanks for coming by. So we need to figure out, how do we let go of the expectations of our adult children. It's like, I raise my children. Maybe you have 4 or 5 children, and out of the 4 or 5 children, maybe 3 of them are doing wonderful and 2 of them are struggling and stressing out. Does that mean that you didn't parent well? What it means is that every child is different, and that every child's experience in the same household is different. And that's something that us as parents have a hard time dealing with, because we'll say, oh, well, Shirley did good. Stephanie did good. What happened to Bob and Barney? What happened to them? Why didn't they do so good? Because each child's experience in that household is different. Each child's relationship with their parent is different. You have a different relationship with each child. You try to treat them equally, yeah, but there's still a difference in your relationship with each child based on their personality, um, and the time that they're born in your life. There's a bunch of different things that come into place as to why we have different relationships and why their experiences may be different, even though they were raised in the same household. So when we start letting go of some of the expectations of how our children respond, at that point, it may become easier for us to start hearing what their feelings are and why they feel the way they do in terms of our parenting. That's a tough pill to swallow when you know that you've done the best that you could do, and then you have a child coming to you saying, well, you didn't, and you were this, and you were that, and I didn't like this and that. It's a tough pill to swallow, but it's important that we kind of stop having expectations of them thinking that we were perfect, and start trying to open up the avenues to listen and have conversations with our adult children if we intend to have a relationship with them. Now, there are some instances where we may have to step away from our adult children. We may have to say, you know what, we have to have a break from each other. You go your way, I go my way, and then in a couple of years, maybe we'll come back and find a median here. Because again, it goes back to boundaries. And if a child explaining or expressing how they felt, especially, listen, there's a difference if you grew up with parents that maybe were drug addicts or alcoholics, or you were homeless, and those are different areas where you understand that children may take a long time to get over those things. But I'm talking about your average household where maybe a parent didn't speak to you the way you wanted to be spoken to, or maybe you spanked them for something that they shouldn't have been spanked for. I'm talking about those kind of instances. And if there can't be a resolve somewhere, then there may be time to let go, take a break. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with saying, because remember, Miss Me, you said at a point, they're adults and that we have to respect them, and that, there has to be mutual respect. So because there has to be mutual respect, we may have to make a decision that we may have to part ways until we can come back together and figure things out. So Thomas says the best way that I learned to let go, respect the idea that two people can be at the same place at the same time and go through something but come out of the event with two different experiences. And absolutely, and that's what I was talking about. Like, we can be in the same household but our experiences can be different because we're different people. And so we as parents, sometimes we have to deal with that because it's hard, because you may have one child telling you, "Oh, but everything was fine," and the other child is telling you, "No, it wasn't." So then it's difficult for you as the parent to take that in. So we have to try to figure it out, and it's not easy. Clarence says there's no book on how to be a good parent, but if your child tells you you did things wrong, you obviously didn't raise them correct. Because even if they felt you were wrong, they dare not say it. And I don't believe that, Clarence. I have a difference of opinion in that. I believe that because children are, they do become adults at some point, they have a right to say, because how do you help to heal if you can't say, I feel this was wrong or that was wrong? I believe that you have the right to say that you have a problem with this or you have a problem with that. I absolutely believe that. I believe there's a way to do it. I believe there's a way to say it, and I can tell you in some cases there may have to be some mediation so that everyone can get their feelings across, because it would be very hard for a parent to sit back and listen to a child tell them all that they've done wrong when their intention was to do things right. So it's hard, but as a parent, you have to find it in you to listen, as long as it's coming through on a in a respectful manner. Um, okay, so Dorothy says she disagrees as well. And everybody has a right to their own opinion. I just feel like, because as an adult, I was able to go to my mom and speak to my mom and say, listen, this is what I felt. And it was because of that and the way I went to her that she was open to it. And we were able to have a long conversation about it. And until my mom passed, we had a very healthy relationship. So, there's different ways, things work differently for individuals in their households. So Miss Me says, be sure to, oh, thank you, thank you, Miss Me. So Vern's Young Closet says, I was a young widow and I instilled in my children to say, I love you, to hug, get an education, and to move out at age 18. If they need to come back later, that is okay. And for me, it was the same thing. But I had a problem with telling my children when they turned 18 they had to leave, because I felt like in our generation a lot of parents dump their kids out as soon as they graduated from high school. It's like, okay, go, you have to be on your own. So and this is me personally, I was determined to do something different. I always wanted my children to have a soft place to fall. Now, was that right? Is that the right way? I don't know. I don't know, but I didn't feel the need for them to run out so quick. I wanted them to be really, really ready when the time came for them to leave, so that they didn't have to come back home. And that in itself can backfire. That can backfire. So Miss Me says, I don't have adult children yet. However, I believe it's all about delivery. And I can say this is that yes, it is absolutely about the delivery. And as a parent, if the message isn't delivered to me correctly, I'm going to take offense to it. And as the adult child, if my message isn't relayed correctly, he's going to take offense to it, or she's going to take offense to it. So I definitely believe it's in the delivery. I definitely believe that. And there has to be a mutual respect. But I think that if there is a mutual respect, that the delivery will come across correctly anyway. So I think some issues, there may be some anger and things like that involved where the delivery isn't correct. But if you have a child, an adult child, and they really want to heal themselves, then they're ultimate goal is to have the conversation so that they could be understood, so that they could heal. So the best way to do that is to come with the proper delivery. So Thomas says, Clarence, if you could find it in your heart to accept that your child has a right to their experience and know that it doesn't mean that either of you are lying or wrong, you simply have different views. And if we don't have that, I agree with you 100%, Thomas. If we don't have that, we have nothing, because we are all different. And if you raise your children the way they should be raised, then they should be able to express themselves. There should be no fear of you saying, this really hurt me or this really bothered me. There shouldn't be anything wrong with that. But like I said, as a mom, I understand that it would probably hurt me because my intent was to parent you properly. So Vern says, I needed the break being the only parent, and I had to push them out of the nest. They all had amazing jobs at the hospital, a bank, and a manager. Bye. Girl, I hear you. I hear you. Bye. As long as they're set up, and there's nothing. Listen, I left home at 17 and I never went back home. So there's nothing wrong with that. Some kids can do it, some kids can survive it, and then others may not for whatever reason there is. Now, times are a little different now. So I think it was a little easier back then than it probably is now. Now it's a little bit more difficult, but that's why it's important that we do our jobs as parents and prepare them for the real outside world. We have to prepare them. Hey, Rose of Sharing, thank you so much for coming by. So that's why we have to prepare our children for the future. Prepare them for real life instead of uh, putting them in a little shell and not letting them see the realities of what's really out there. Because if not, there's a culture shock, and when they get out, they can't survive. So, Verns, you obviously did something very right. Um, so, Dorothy says you can do the best you can with what you have and still can have a bad seed. I agree. I absolutely agree. And that goes back to every child in the household, and there's different experiences. And again, there's nothing wrong with saying, well, you did something wrong, mom, you did something wrong, dad, you guys hurt me in this way. There's nothing wrong with that. But sometimes these children are using this as clutches or excuses to have anger. And if you really, really want to heal, you'll do it the right way. And that's the thing. Clarence says, as a parent, you do the best you can and you raise them to prepare them for life. So you have to make some unpopular decisions. Be your child's parent and not their friends. And I agree. I agree. We absolutely have to raise them to prepare them for life. We do. But again, life sometimes comes with things that we don't expect to happen. But if we do a good job at showing them different systems, different how we handle things, because it also is based on what you've shown your children, not so much of what you tell them, but how did you handle failures in your life? How did you handle when you lost a job? How did you handle that? Were you one of those parents that said, okay, I'm going to put my head in the pillow and we just going to be homeless? Or did you show your children that you got up every day and you struggled until you got it right? It all depends on what we're showing them as well. Do you show them that you get up every day and you go to a job and you work a job? Hopefully they will take that in and they'll do the same, but they don't always do it, and that goes back to what Dorothy just said. So what we can do as parents is do the best that we can. There's no book. There's even if there is a book, that book is not in your life. You can take tips and tricks and certain things from certain areas, but you still have to deal with the personalities of your own household. So we have to do that. Clarence says, how do you prepare them if they don't respect you? Well, right, it's difficult. So there has to be respect. Now, And this is, I think I had mentioned this last week, that there's a saying that we're not raising children, we're raising adults. So I think from as early as possible, this is one of the reasons why parents should give their children responsibilities, age appropriate responsibilities. Parents should keep a line of open communication, because along with those things comes respect. Now, Clarence, you're in the same generation as I am. So it's difficult if we didn't start to change things, because our parents didn't believe in that. Our parents believed when I tell you something, you do it, there's no questions about it, and you just had to do it. You couldn't discuss it, you couldn't have anything to say about it, your opinion didn't matter. So if we're doing things differently for our children, we want to change that narrative, and we want them to be able to have a conversation with us, because if they're not able to, then the respect is sometimes gone. So Dorothy says, I agree, I'm not their friend, I'm their parent. And absolutely. And there's a tough narrative there, because when they become adults, you're still their parent. And this is a problem, because as a parent, as an adult child, they may tell you, oh, well, I'm an adult. Let me do things my way. I'm grown. I'm this, I'm that. But you still hurt when they hurt, because you're a parent. When they fall, you feel it, because you're a parent. When they need you and you can't be there, you feel it, because you're a parent. So it's difficult when children become adults and they feel, oh, I'm an adult and I can say this and I can say that. But 99 times out of 10, they're going to come running back home to mama or papa. They are, because they're still your children. And most of them want to be your children when it's okay for them. But, you know, when they want to be adults, they're adults. But when they want to be children, it's all back to mommy, mommy, daddy, daddy, right? So Dorothy says, I agree, responsibility is the key. So Miss Me says, that's how I'm grooming mine. I'm not a single parent, but I want my kids to want to leave the nest at 18. Financial literacy, social networking, etc. And you know what? I think that's what a lot of people want for their children. But as I say, when your children are young, your children are 10, 11, 12, we have um, hopes for them, we have dreams for them, we have desires for them. But parenting a 10-year-old, a 12-year-old is different from parenting a 15-year-old, a 16-year-old, an 18-year-old, a 19-year-old. It's different. So we go through all these things. We may prepare one way, and then something else that we don't expect comes in the way. And you hope that all the dreams that you have for them and what you're preparing them for, you just hope that everything goes into play and that it works out the way you've intended it to work. That's all we can do, is set the stage, prepare them, and hope that it goes in that direction. Um, so Vern says, I was a soccer mom, a volleyball mom, driving them everywhere. I had to play mom, dad because of being a widow, but I do not feel guilty for making them more move out of the nest. And you should not. You know, and that's the thing. Like, we should not be parenting out of guilt. If that is what you chose, because I'm the same way. I was basketball mom, softball mom, driving everybody kids everywhere. I was doing it all. And you want them to leave, but some of us don't really want them to leave, but some of us do. But you want to make sure that they're okay. And that's the bottom line, because I don't think that most parents want to set their children up for failure. We want to set them up for success. And success means different things for different people. So we want to hope that we're making them responsible, where they can go out there in the world and they can handle whatever responsibilities are put their way. We want to hope that is what happens. But no matter what, if you've done something with your children and you've raised your children a certain way, and there are things that your children may come to you and say, oh, you didn't do this correctly or you didn't do that correctly, you know, don't condemn yourself. Give yourself a ticket of forgiveness and say, you know what? I'm a human being. I didn't do everything right, but it was not my intention. So, as parents, the best way to not parent out of guilt is to also not condemn yourself, because the most that we can do if we have not lived up to our children's expectations, the least we can do is say, you know what? I hear you. I'm going to listen to you, but I'm not going to condemn myself. I'm not going to stop living my life or living in a state of failure because you felt that I didn't do something right. And a lot of parents will sit there and be miserable because their children are unhappy with something they've done. Don't do that to yourself, especially if you know that you've done the best that you could do, especially if you know your intentions was right, because this is going back to your intentions. If your intention was to be a good parent, if your intention was to give your children the best that you could give them, then that should be good enough, in my opinion, in my humble opinion. That should be good enough. I know that with my mom, she made some mistakes, but once I became an adult at 26, I got it. I got it. And I started really respecting her more. Once I started experiencing life myself, then it was, how did she do this? How did she do this on her own? We never wanted for any. How did she do this? So, it became a level of real respect once I started having my children and realizing how difficult this is. Um, so Clarence says, my parents grew up during sharecropping times. Their parents grew up during racism. My mother's upbringing was for their survival. The consequences could be death. I believe in total respect. Me as an adult, I have experienced more in life than my child. My children can have their own way when they live on their own. And absolutely. I absolutely, that I agree with. I agree with that. When you are living on your own and you're outside of your mother's house, you do whatever you want to do. That it then becomes your life. Then I have nothing to say. It becomes your life totally. But guess what? Even when they're on their own, you still gonna have something to say because you're still the parents. But what you say is limited. So Tawana says, I love the relationship I have with my Brie. She's a super kid, 29, but still my baby doll. Isn't that the truth? Isn't that the best when you can feel that we went through the rough times together, because parenting teens is not easy. But when you can get to the point where you can say, my goodness, we did it, we got through it, and now this is, this is an example of what I put into society. That's a wonderful, wonderful thought. So also, you're in the YouTube chat, huh, Dorothy? Good. So Tawana says, that's true, but I also believe that as parents, we need to be able to grow, which means to learn a new way if what you're doing isn't effective. And absolutely, but I question, how much do we do that as adults? Like, I agree with that when the children are younger and we're raising them. But what do you do for a child that has already been raised? Because my parenting at this stage, I've already parented. So at this point, it's more of some kind of a mutual understanding so that you can heal yourself from whatever you feel that I've caused you. Now it's a different story. But definitely when they're younger, if something is not working, you change it. And for those that may be here that have younger children, that's the key. If something isn't working, you change it, because that may prevent later on your children not being happy, or them being able to heal quicker because you changed it as you saw it coming through. So that's an important comment to make, Twana. So Miss Me says, Twana says, we oftentimes shoot ourselves in the foot by refusing to learn. Correct communication works for me. And I agree. And I absolutely agree with that, as long as there's respect, because that's the biggie to me. I think that when people don't, your delivery, as Missy said, it's all about your delivery. If you come to your parent or your mom or your pops and you come to them the right way, then they're going to hear you. And it's no different than you as the parent. If you want to discuss something with your child, you have to go to them the right way so that conversation can be effective. So Miss Simmons says, not saying no has come back and bit us as parents. I have a 17-year-old stepchild with no plan when she turns 18 because we have provided everything to her that we didn't have growing up. And Miss Simmons, that's something that a lot of us have done. A lot of us have done that. And again, we can't condemn ourselves for doing things as long as we understand where we went wrong at. And then how do you correct that now for an 18-year-old that's been given everything and that the word no is a foreign object to them? So how do we move forward from there? Do we just throw them out to the wolves and say, listen, this is life. We showed you one thing, but we didn't prepare you for life, but now here life is. And I think that's what happens to a lot of us as children. As adults, I think that happened to a lot of us, and I think that's happening to some of the children today. The parents are putting them out early and they're not really prepared for life itself. So Vern says, if I may, my grandparenting style has vastly changed. My grandparents can do no wrong. Hello? My grandbabies can't do nothing wrong. I don't care what they're doing, but guess what? We're not parents. We are the grandparents, and that's what we're there for. We are there to spoil them rotten and then send them back. That's what our job is. Our job isn't to tell them no. No. So sometimes the right way can expire. It may have worked 20 years ago, but it might not work now. Absolutely, Miss Me. Absolutely, because things change. The way society has changed. So I believe now when you're raising children, because of the way society is, you really have to take every step to preparing them for adulthood. You have to, as children, you have to sit them down. You have to show them about budgeting. You have to tell them, no, we don't need this. You have to show them the difference between needs and wants. Times have changed and we have got to prepare these children for that now. Tawana says, my parents wanted me to fear them. I wanted my daughter to respect me. There is a difference, and every kid is different. So what works for your first child may not work for your second child. And I expressed that in the last video that I started out with spanking, and then I said, no, I'm not going to do this. So by the time I had my second set of children, that went out the window. That wasn't an issue anymore. So we do have to be willing to change something when it's not working. So Miss Me says, at Miss Simmons, so do I, but I keep my opinion to myself because I disrupt the co-parenting flow. Okay, so I know what you guys are referring to. Being a step parent is a completely different ballgame. Absolutely. Because your hands are tied in so many ways. I think being a step parent really relies on respect. Being a step parent really relies on you gaining that child's respect and getting them to give you the same thing. It is not easy being a step parent, and my hat's off to anybody that does it because it's not easy at all. It's not. It's not. Dorothy says we try to give them everything we didn't have. It's in our nature. So yeah, it is in our nature to give them what we didn't have, and I think that premise has destroyed a lot of our babies because we were so busy giving them materialistic things and just giving to sometimes we got lost in that and forgot the importance of saying no or the importance of not giving all the time. So I think we get lost in that system and also that guilt format that we don't want to continue, but we have to find a way out of it. So my thing is, I came up with a couple of points, and it was to let go of expectations of how your children should respond. So if you have a child that's an adult that is having problems with you, don't have expectations of how they should respond because it's not something that you're in control of. we have to understand that they are their own people at this point, and they come with their own set of opinions, their own set of boundaries. But you yourself have to set boundaries if the behavior is not helping you, if it's hurtful, if it's something that you don't like about the way an adult child is speaking to you. You have to fix it. You have to set boundaries. And sometimes we may have to walk away. And that's important. Don't condemn yourself for mistakes that you made. Don't do it, because you are, absolutely, everyone is going to make mistakes. So don't condemn yourself for it. Learn to forgive yourself and say, you know what, I did the best I could with the tools that I know how, that I had at the time. Now, with that being said, I think that when you realize as a parent that you've made some mistakes and that there are some things that maybe cause problems, I think that it's a good idea to have a sit down with your kids and say, you know what, it was never my intention to hurt you. It was never my intention to have you feel this way, and I'm sorry. So you should be able to validate that child's feelings. But after that, you can't, bury a hole and dig a hole for yourself and go dig a grave for yourself because they can't get over it. At some points they have to become adults and they have to take responsibility for where they're at. All you can do is apologize and forgive yourself. That's all we can really do. And validate their feelings. If the feelings that we can't tell someone their feelings aren't real to them. The feelings they're having are very real to them. It's very real to them. You can validate those feelings by saying, I'm so sorry you feel that way. It wasn't my intention. But you don't have a responsibility to adult children to enable them because of mistakes that you've made. It's not the way to parent. It's not the way for you as an adult to have peace in your life. You've got to forgive, and some families may need counseling. Some families may need therapy. Some families may need coaching to help them better communicate and better hear each other. So there are different ways that families can resolve issues, especially where parents are concerned, because usually parents feel they're going to grow old and their children are going to take care of them, their children are going to look out for them, and that's usually what people's goals are. So we want to try to protect that peace as much as we can. Dorothy says, don't fear anyone or anything, then they have no boundaries. And there has to be any relationship has to have boundaries. Any relationship, whether it's your marriage, your children, your work relationships, there always has to be boundaries. Period. Tawana says, I feel like I didn't really get a chance when I was married. My husband's kids doesn't like anyone, so no matter who he married, they were not interested in a step parent. And that happens. And that happens. And like I said, it takes a really special person to get into a situation with stepchildren and really parent and really give it the best that they can. Because it's a situation that there's no book on. It's not easy, but it can be done. There are plenty of examples of step parents that made things work. So there's enough of them out here that it can work. It just has to be wanted from both sides. So Vern says, wow, I'm very sorry, Tawana. Vern says, thank you, but it's okay. Let those grown kids live their life and not bother me. Yes, Carol, we as parents need to learn to apologize to our kids when we know we were wrong. We want them to do the same thing, so we need to teach them by showing them what it looks like. Absolutely. And Miss Simmons says, I can see my stepdaughter doing a lot of things because I know her strengths. I just need for her to believe more in herself and be a little independent. She knows her safety net. And you know what? I think everybody should have some form of a safety net, but there has to be boundaries between enabling and giving a person a safe place to fall. As long as that person is going out there and giving it their all, there's nothing wrong with being a safety net for them to fall back on, as long as they're going out there and doing their best. Clarence says, your child is a direct result of your parenting skills. We are losing our race by not raising our children. I was taught that a woman's body is a precious jewel and should only be seen by her husband. But nowadays, females have so little respect for themselves, they don't have a problem showing everything. Also, young men don't have a problem disrespecting anyone. So, my thing with that is, like I said, I feel like in each household, and there may be multiple children, and there's a different experience that each of those children have in their household. But I don't necessarily mean that, I don't necessarily know that that means that I haven't done my job as a parent. If I have 3 or 4 children that have done the right thing and I have one that hasn't, does that mean I haven't done my job as a parent? Or does that mean that I may have needed more help in raising this particular child? But it doesn't mean, I don't think it means that I haven't parented correctly. It just means that that child may have needed something that I may not have been able to provide. But again, do I take responsibility for what my child is doing at 28, 29, 30, 35? Do I still take responsibility? At what point does the blame stop becoming the parent and falls on the young adult? So that's my question. So, Miss Me says, I'm learning that it's okay to not have a relationship with my stepkids. Sometimes it's not gonna happen. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes we're not gonna have a relationship with our own kids that we birthed. Sometimes it's not gonna happen. Or sometimes we have to take a step back and let the cards fall where they may, and maybe after a year or two, maybe they'll get it together and come back and say, you know what, I want to talk. There's no book on this. We just don't know. But what I can say and what I do know is that if you've tried your best, if you've done your best, forgive yourself. Don't keep condemning yourself for trying to be the best that you could be, because all we can do is try. So, guys, we have been on here for an hour, and the hour goes so quick. It really does go really quick. But I promised myself that I would not hold you guys for more than an hour. I promised that, because I do appreciate you guys coming in, and you guys are coming in every week, and I am so grateful for that. I'm so grateful for that. Keep in mind, guys, if there's a topic that you want to discuss, just hit me up and we will put it on the calendar and we will discuss it. Every conversation that I have, the intent is to empower ourselves. The intent is for us to learn and grow and become better human beings. That is my intent for Sunday's talks. It is a safe forum where you can express your opinion and not be beat up on or made to feel bad because your opinion is different from anyone else. This is a safe zone, and we have grown folk conversation here where we handle differences of opinion and just learn from each other. That's what this platform is about. So, with that being said, please don't, if you have not subscribed to this channel, please remember to subscribe. Share this live around so that people can see how awesome this conversation is. I want people to know that we are having grown folk conversations over here and that we're all learning from each other. Miss Me has a topic for me. Okay, girl. Okay, you give me some good ones. So I want you guys, don't go away. I want to show you something really quick that we have that is about to happen. And if you guys can tune in, we have something special coming on. There's a collaboration with myself and 2 other young women on the YouTube platform. I would love for you guys to come on in. We are premiering our show on Wednesday, this Wednesday at 11 a.m. We are going to premiere, and we need all the support that we can get. We need it. We need it. We need it. So if you guys can tune in on your lunch break, tune in. But I'm going to show you a quick slide so you'll know what is about to occur. We're going to be doing some hot YouTube street stuff. We're going to talk about it. We're going to get into it. We're going to talk about some hot topics that's going on in the news. So we have a really good show coming up for you guys. So please, if you haven't subscribed, hit the notification bell. You'll be notified. I want you to go subscribe to our channel, Women Uncensored. go on over, subscribe to that channel. So even if you can't make the live event, you can catch the replay. So, guys, remember, if you can dream about it, you damn sure can be about it. And I want you to take a few minutes and enjoy this presentation. Okay? Have a great Sunday evening. Thanks, guys.
This is your girl, Miss Me, and I am a woman uncensored.
Hello, my name is Carol, and I am also a woman uncensored.
My name is Tawny Yvette, and I am a woman uncensored.
I am a mother, I am a wife, I am a youth coach,
And I am a certified health, wellness, and life coach.
but I am also an inspirer, a motivator, and an all-around life lesson teacher.
And I am a woman uncensored.
And I am also a woman uncensored.
I am a woman uncensored.